guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video. Happy to have you here. Once a year or so, I like to put out one of these quick tips and tricks videos. I'm going to go ahead and outline 25 tips for you guys today. If you're a new player, a video like this is going to do you a ton of service. Hopefully, that's the idea at least, right? Give you a lot to kind of think about, maybe even jot some of these down yourselves. Maybe somebody in the comments will be nice enough to list all 25 tips and tricks. That way, you guys don't have to watch the entire video and put up with me for 20 minutes or so. Jokes aside, guys, really hope that even veterans are able to glean a tip or two from this video. So I want to start with a question. If you could do me a real solid, guys, it's really important to me as a content creator to know how long you guys have been playing the game. So if you can just drop a comment, I know not all of you will, but maybe I'll run a community tab poll. Maybe that would be more accurate as well alongside this video. So look out for that when this video goes live. But again, I want to orient my content to benefit the majority of you guys most of the time. You know, we always like to have beginner stuff and some more end game stuff as well. But for the most part, I want to be targeting, you know, the majority of you, making content that's helpful for everybody. Here is the goal, of course, on the channel. So anyway, let me know how long you've been playing so that I know, right? So here we go, guys. Starting out with tip number one, when you think about survivability of your teams, most people think about increased defense as being the quintessential buff that you need to have on your squad. Increased defense is nice because especially it boosts the damage of defense-based champions in the game. However, there are two abilities that I feel like new players especially often overlook. I'm not going to try to always use legendary examples here, but Ursaga is a good one because she has both on the same ability, and that is Ally Protect and Strengthen. So tip number one is going to be, don't discount these abilities if your team is dying. Strengthen 25% mitigates 25% of all the damage your allies receive who have the buff. And Ally Protect is mitigating 50% of all damage coming into all of your allies. Tip number two actually kind of ties into this one. People do not build, whether it's Ursaga or whether it's Vizix or whether it's any of the Ally Protect champions in the game. People tend to not build them with enough health, with enough HP. You're gonna want a lot of HP on your Ally Protect champions. Obviously, defense is good too, but HP is very, very important. Tip number three is along these same lines again here, guys, and that is about a new debuff that's been added to the game. I guess it was originally added to the game with
come on inside and get yourself something cool to drink.
The white bear. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at him here. He is a skinwalker. I'm sure many of you probably don't use this bear. He's not that great, but he was the first champion added to the game who had decreased crit rate on all allies, or on all enemies, excuse me. On all allies would kind of suck, right? Decreased crit rate is a very good debuff to have on your team when you have an Ally Protect champion on your team as well. Because think about it, most bosses in this game have only a 15% crit rate, but all it takes is one critical hit to totally wipe out, to kill your Ally Protect champion, because they're going to take the brunt of that damage for not just one, but all of your allies. So again, decreased crit rate is a very underrated buff when you're using an Ally Protect champion on your team. Tip number four is going to be to always think about stat and artifact synergy when choosing gear to put on your champions. Now, what do I mean by that artifact and stat synergy? Well, think about it, guys. If we have, let's say, immunity, for example, right? Who do I have in an immunity set right now? Probably Skytouch Shaman. Let's go ahead and take a look at it really quickly. When you're assessing gear that you farm in any dungeon, right? You want to be cognizant of what type of champions are going to be using that artifact set. For example, immunity. This is a perfect artifact. You're generally going to want to have that champion fast. So I'm looking for speed substats on all my immunity gear because they're going to come in first and cleanse the debuffs off of your team. So you're generally going to want them faster than most of the other champions on your team. You know, maybe aside from your speed booster, maybe even including your speed booster. But it's not just immunity, it's also shield. Well, on shield artifacts, obviously we want more HP. So I'm more inclined to keep an artifact that is a shield artifact because I know I'm going to need the wearer to have a lot of HP. Where the heck is shield? On my screen right now. I'm trying not to edit this video too much, right?
There's no need. I already have.
30% HP, that is based on the wearer's HP. So we want HP on our shield artifacts, right? But it doesn't just end there. I can go on and on and on, but obviously Savage Gear, right, is great for your nukers in this game. So we're going to be looking for crit rate and, crit damage as substats on those artifacts. So always be thinking about the substats before you make the decision to sell, trash, or keep a new artifact that you just looted, right? I guess you wouldn't trash it, sell, or keep, right? There we go.
Real men of genius.
Real men of genius.
Number 5, don't feel like you have to 6-star every champion in this game. Now listen, this is my dirty pay to win account, but on my free-to-play account, I have a bunch of level 50 champions. You can get, I guess Jarang is an example that I use here in a secret room in Doom Tower, right? You can get a lot of utility, granted he's naked, but don't mind that, right?
Oh, that's it, I'm not going.
You can get a lot of utility guys out of champions. This took me a while to recognize. I was so used to just maxing everybody on the account where I'm actually inclined to spend money. On my free-to-play, I learned you can get a lot of utility, especially in faction wars, out of a champion just at level 50. Don't feel pressured with every champion to take them to level 60. Tip number 6 is you don't need to spend money on this game. This is a very important one. Sure, it's a gacha champion collector genre game, Raid Shadow Legends, but that does not mean, especially in Raid, as we deal with all these pop-ups, does not mean that you have to spend money to have success, and I swear that is the truth, guys. Think about it this way. You get, at this point in the game, 3 years into its trajectory here, they give you so many, or access to so many free champions. If you play long enough, everybody will have a Vizix the Unbowed. Everybody will have a Scylla the Drakes. Everybody will have access to a champion like Drexstar Blood Twin. It doesn't just end there though, guys. You'll have access to Grush the Mangler, to Rosin Scarhide vis-a-vis the Fusion. And you know what, guys? Even the other Fusion, who is another permanent Fusion inside the game, Broadmaw, just got a really big buff. So I think a lot of players could benefit from Broadmaw as well, especially if you don't have a solid reviver on your team. 4-turn cooldown, revive 2 dead allies, 25% HP with block damage, also has an increased crit rate and an increased speed, albeit the weak version on a 3-turn cooldown with turn meter fill. So you can get champions like this for free just by playing the game, and then along the way, you're guaranteed to get a couple legendaries just through the shards that you get and earn just playing the game. So never feel, whether you're inclined to spend money on this game, and if you want to spend money on your entertainment, who am I to judge? I do it, I don't care, right? But if you don't want to spend money, or if you're not sure, or if you don't feel like you can compete without spending money, just know that you don't have to. You really don't have to spend money on this game to get full amount of enjoyment. I really enjoy my free-to-play account. In a way, it almost gives you more strategic possibilities because your toolkit, if you will, is a little bit, more empty than a big spender who can just throw anything at the wall. Don't have to, think as much necessarily about strategy. And I know that firsthand because I have both, accounts. All right. Tip number 6, that was a long one, is put thought into the speed of your teams. This is a very basic tip for you guys, but I see it all the time with new players, right? They'll have an arena team, for example. If I look at the speeds, they'll have maybe their nuker going first, their debuffer, this is kind of a bad team, for example, but let's use this team. Their debuffer going, second, and then they'll have their turn meter going third. What are you doing, man? Generally speaking, it's just intuitive here, but it bears mentioning, right? We want to have our speed boosters going first before our debuffers to kind of speed boost them up to the booster speed, right? And then we always want to have our debuffers, especially in the arena, going before our nukers. It's just common sense. I don't need to belabor the point. Tip number 7 is going to be A1 cycling. A1 cycling is such a powerful tool to use inside this game. Let me go ahead and jump into Barbarian Crypt just to show you what I'm talking about here. So we get to the second wave, or let's just say we're finishing up on the first wave of any dungeon in this game that you're struggling on, that you're having, issues, your team's wiping, you're dying a lot. Well, the importance of A1 cycling, especially leading up to bosses, for example, in Doom Tower. Let's just pretend here that we are, going into a boss battle. We're on the second wave and we're going into a Doom Tower boss, for example. Cycling your A1 ability is going to be so important because we want to go into that boss with all of our skills on all of our champions on cooldown. So it's something that you learn pretty early in this game, hopefully, but cycling like I am right now, I'm just spamming A1s here. It's going to take you a little bit extra time, going to take you a few extra turns, but I'm going to go into that boss battle. I'm going to go into that next wave wherever I'm struggling inside the game whether it's a dungeon or anywhere but, you know, Spider, I guess, right? You go right into Spider. You're going to want to cycle your A1s, and then boom, we go into the second wave here, or the boss battle, wherever we're struggling, and we have all of our abilities off cooldown, so we are ready to go with our best skills. You can see, you know, Valkyrie coming in with her stand firm, her shield and counterattack ability, okay? Next tip is going to be the best time to pull shards is double time. Double time. 2 times events, guys.
You're allowed to talk? Are you serious?
A very obvious tip, but I'm going to include a couple obvious ones along the way because if you're a brand new player watching this video, well, it's important to know that. Now, what do I mean by that? These guaranteed extra legendaries, guaranteed champion, 10-time champion events. They're throwing more and more events the longer that goes on inside this game at us, which gives us, you know, temptation to pull our shards. Now, especially if you're not spending a lot of money in this game, all you really care about is what are the best odds for me to get more legendary or more good epic champions, and those are still double chance pull events, right? So whether it's Sacred, Void, or Ancients, generally speaking, unless you're a big spender, you really want that 10x champion, you're probably better off just waiting for a double chance event. Some more on the obvious side of things here, guys. Tip number 10 is going to be the best place to farm experience and silver. A nice mixture of both is going to be on 12-3 of Brutal. Now, I say kind of a mixture of both because technically speaking, you'll be better off. And I say Brutal too, that's energy efficiency as well. Sure, if you can farm Nightmare, you'll get more experience, but generally speaking, it might take you longer, and the energy won't be quite as efficient as 12-3 Brutal. So that means Brimstone Path, you go over to stage 3, and boom, you have your campaign. Well,
cause I'm a businessman. I'm a businessman.
That's not my campaign farmer, but let's pretend he is. And then we put our food in the other 3 slots. Next tip is, generally speaking, guys, you want to go ahead and farm 3 food at a time. Whether you're leveling up a champion or farming food, these champions are going to split the experience. If there's only 2 of them, they're splitting it 2 ways. If 3, they're splitting it 3 ways. If there's 4, they're splitting it 4 ways. Therefore, the campaign farmer is only getting 25% instead of 33 or 50% of the total experience, okay? And by the way, that's the best place to farm both a little bit of silver and experience. If we're just going for experience, it'd be 12-6, but shields sell for a little bit more silver, so I go with 12-3. Of course, the choice is yours. Speaking of silver, the next tip, guys, is going to be the best place to farm silver inside the entire game is still, weirdly enough, Spider's Den, which is also the only place to farm up accessories inside the game, right? So it kind of feels weird that the accessory area is also the best silver area, but accessories sell for a lot of silver. So if you need silver, and who doesn't, you're going to want to assemble a really good Spider team and farm these levels and get some silver, right? Sell your accessories. So if you're just farming silver, you're better off doing it in Spider's Den and farming accessories at the same time instead of just grinding 12-3 on the campaign. It's not going to be as efficient for your energy. All right, tip number 11, 12, 13.
Now, I'm using my knowledge to help struggling small business owners make it in this competitive world.
Is going to be another kind of obvious one, but this is the biggest thing that I see beginners in this game do wrong. And it's so obvious, but again, I have to mention it. They'll take their starting champion. Let's just use the first one that I happen to see here. Let's use our friend Aethel. And I'm making this mistake, so it's a perfect place to mention it to you guys. I'll see Aethel or Kayle. Kayle, I'm actually good on, but Aethel, no. Let's see if I have Elhain right. Better, not perfect. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about crit rate, guys. And you can see she's, missing her chest piece. So,
Indeed.
we can add it there, right? That's where that crit rate is missing, 5%. I see a lot of new players not prioritizing 100% crit rate. I didn't say 95, like I'm showing you right now. Didn't say 90, didn't say 80, 70, 60. The only exception would be champions like maybe Cold Heart, Soulbound Bowyer, champions that have a built-in increased crit rate, or if you're using a crit rate aura from another champion, like maybe a Battle Khazar or something, if you're lucky enough to have him. But other than that, guys, you always want your nukers to be landing critical hits, especially in the arena, but really everywhere in the game. You might not notice those weak hits, from time to time, but you'll notice it over time, and it might cost you losses and therefore energy as well. So on the gauntlets, you're always pretty much, especially in the early game, going to be going with either crit rate or crit damage on your gauntlets. Never put attack percentage unless you're like building some weird bomb champion or something like that. There are exceptions to every rule is what I'm trying to say here, but go with crit rate. First priority on all of your damage dealers, right, is going to be getting their crit rate up to 100%, okay? So very, very important there. That is your first priority with every nuker. Then you can worry about, you know, attack percentage and crit damage. Best place to get that, again, are the gauntlets and the amulet in terms of crit rate and crit damage. As you progress in the game, you can start transitioning those crit rate gauntlets in exchange for crit damage. That's why it's important to find artifacts with a bunch of crit rate as substats. That way you can make that swap on your nukers as you progress inside the game. Another, you know, kind of obvious one. A very obvious tip, but I'm going to include more on the obvious side of things here, guys. Kind of obvious one, but this is, and I've said that about the last 4 tips, my bad, is going to be accuracy. Let me just tell it like this, guys. Anytime you are touching anything on the opponents, right? Whether you're, you know, landing a debuff here, or whether you decrease defense, right? For example, whether you're reducing their turn meter, whether you're stealing their buffs, whether you're decreasing the duration of their buffs, anytime you are touching an enemy other than damage, you're going to need accuracy unless the champion has a this debuff cannot be resisted ability, and there are a few really cool champions like that in the game. So you need to build a lot of accuracy. So after a crit rate on your debuffers, your nukers, whomever is touching anything, there's a lot of hybrid champions that don't necessarily fall into one category in this game. Anything, guys, anything that is touching an enemy, you need accuracy. That's why we always say to try to prioritize accuracy in your Great Hall. It's going to make a huge impact. Also, in the early and the mid game, look out for champions that have accuracy auras. Accuracy auras, even if it's just 40 or even better, 60. I'm trying to think of somebody off the top of my head. The only one that comes to mind immediately is Biggin, so I'm sorry to go for another legendary. But just to show you guys, whenever you run across any champion that has an accuracy aura in the beginning of the game, especially when you don't have a lot of champions ranked up to put accuracy banners on, it's going to be huge for your team. So look for those accuracy auras in the mid game especially. It will help you out tremendously. All right, next time is do not insta sell speed artifacts with speed substats. Now, in this game for a long time, everybody says flat stats are trash, don't use flat stat artifacts, but there are exceptions to every single rule. Number one, let me just go on a quick monologue here. I actually saw a video from Murder Inc. that was talking about this same thing. I'm trying to look for Arbiter here. But when we say flat stats, first of all, we don't mean accuracy chests. We don't mean resistance chests. We don't mean speed boots. Those are not the flat stats that people refer to when they say that flat stats should be sold, right? Don't upgrade flat stats. They're actually referring to attack, defense, and HP flat stats, right? Not percentages. And if I can ever find Arbiter,
dude, I'm right here.
But again, there are exceptions to those rules. Even in the end game, you can find some really crazy epic or legendary artifacts with, you know, a few really good rolls that would still warrant keeping. Let me show you a couple examples on my Arbiter. These are speed artifacts, and I have flat stat attack, triple roll on speed, one of my best artifacts speed-wise. Same thing for her chest, a flat stat HP with 3, rolls on speed. Had I trashed these artifacts because they're just flat stats, who cares? I would have been out my best speed pieces on my best speed champion in the game. So just trashing flat stats, if there's speed especially, we want to at least roll them to level 4 and see where those rolls go. And, you know, secondarily, we're not talking about resistance, accuracy on the chest. Both of those can be very, very advantageous to a bunch of different champions in the game. Advantageous or advantageous, Ash? Come on, bro, learn how to speak. First rule of YouTube, gotta learn how to speak, bro. And speed on the boots, right? The boots are the only artifact you can have speed as the main stat. So never trash speed boots, right? Especially, before the end game. All right, next up is when you're selling your gear, factor in the artifact set pretty heavily. Now that doesn't mean, at all costs, right? So if I get, let me just try to find a crappy set here, and hopefully, before I eat crow, the artifacts from crappy sets, quote unquote, are actually really good. So Daze, for example, right? Daze is one of the worst sets in the game. However, so when I'm keeping it, I want speed, crit rate, defense is fine. I'm looking for accuracy, speed, crit rate, like this, for example, crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage. It looks good.
This looks like a job for Superman.
But I'm at the point in the game where I need more than that. I need speed or accuracy. I'm looking for really speed, accuracy, and crit rate on artifact sets that are trash. But again, keep in mind the rule that we talked about earlier. Well, two things. Number one is there are exceptions to every rule. We talked about flat stats sometimes can even be meaningful. And you're going to evolve as you play this game, and you should be evolving when you think about the types of artifacts that you're keeping. That threshold, I mean, when you start out, you're probably keeping, 3-4 star artifacts, right? But as you progress, you need to always bring that barometer up. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting on a full artifact storage of half crappy artifacts that you're never going to use. I'm just going to tell you myself that for a long time, I overestimated how often I would use crappy artifacts, right? Like, oh, I'll find a champion that I don't really care about that much and put this on. No, when I build a champion, I'm pretty much always looking for good artifacts, right? So I err on the side of trashing artifacts. So an artifact like this, and you can't even see it, my bad. An artifact like that, I'm just gonna trash it, guys. And I'm saying a lot of you guys probably keep this, but it's a days set, man. Only way I'm using this is part of a broken set, because I don't use days at this point in the game, So there you go. Think about that as well. Next one is going to be glyphs, man. Never sell glyphs, first of all, right? Never sell. I don't even know why they made glyphs to be sold, right? You shouldn't be selling glyphs. There's no reason to, because even 1-star glyphs in this game, for example, I could use a 1-star defense glyph. There it is, flat stat defense. I could use this on, a champion that I don't really care about their defense that much, maybe a nuker or something like that. It will still help. It will still help, right? Or I could use it on an artifact that, is a borderline good artifact, but I still want to glyph it out. But the reason I said that glyphs are so important, guys, is because they matter a ton in this game. A, you don't want to sell them. B, you always want to do your faction war battles, because glyphs, try this experiment at home. Go ahead and take a champion, fully level up the artifacts, have them all geared out. Do not put one glyph on them, screenshot their stats, and then glyph them totally out and see the difference, man. Glyphs are huge, and they weren't always in the game. Old school players will know that glyphs were, I know they took, 6 months, a year to add glyphs into the game. When they did, it really gave players the power to extremely, exponentially upgrade the power of their artifacts. So do not underestimate the power of glyphs. All right, speaking of artifacts, guys, the Forge, same thing, man. Same reason to always farm your faction wars. Faction wars, for me, are a #1 priority every day. There's a lot to do in this game. I'm taking faction wars as, A1, because I'm getting materials for the Forge. Specifically, some of the best artifact sets in the game are in the Forge. And my personal favorite, I'm not saying necessarily the best, but definitely my favorite and borderline best. Okay, it's best, maybe. Swift Parry, I don't know, what do you guys prefer? Perception, guys, Perception. Actually, they added a few good ones recently as well. Perception is so good, though. It's better than accuracy, obviously. It has the 40 accuracy. We already talked about how good accuracy is in this game. And then we have speed on top of it, 5% speed. So we're going to need to farm our faction wars. It's the only way to get bloodstones in this game. So A, farm a lot of perception gear, right? I wait for clan versus clan tournaments to do that, but you should probably do the same if you care about your clan and stuff, and then, forge then. However, take advantage of your forge. Do not underestimate the power of the forge in terms of giving you a ton of progression. Really, some of the best artifacts in the game you can only get right there in the artifact forge, so do not ignore it. All right. Another thing to take seriously is our next tip. I've kind of lost count. I think I'm at 20, I think. Do not take Doom Tower for granted, right? Even if you're in the very, very, very beginning of this game, do not take it for granted. I don't care if you can't get to floor 10 on hard. All I care about, at least in the beginning of this game, is just getting to Secret Room 1, right? Start early farming Archmage Helmet. Really, he's a really, really good champion, and that's why I say don't take Doom Tower, for granted. Don't just put it off. I did for a few months on my free-to-play. I just didn't do it because I'm like, I'm only gonna get to floor 15 or whatever it may be, and then I recognize, well, Archmage Helmet's basically like a legendary champion that I can get just from slowly but surely farming all the secret rooms that I can get access to, right? And this guy is just, I mean, 108 base speed, unbelievable stats overall. He has a good multipliers as well. He has turn meter on the A1, on the A2 an AoE stun, decreased turn meter on enemies without stun, and then on the A3 increased speed, crit rate, and increased crit damage on a 3-turn cooldown. What? He's immune to turn meter, decreased in effects, and he has speed in arena battles if you're looking for a speed or elite. Man, he's tremendous basically everywhere for the most part in this game, so don't take Doom Tower for granted. Get your hands on Archmage Helmet. Traditional clan boss is still really, aside from advanced quests and, you know, I don't even include advanced quests in this, really, guys. Traditional clan boss is still the only way to farm the most difficult to get stuff in the game, right? Meaning sacred shards, void shards, legendary skill tomes, epic skill tomes. So always, always, always prioritize, at least me, you know, this is what I would do if I could do it over. I would prioritize clan boss champions in terms of who am I going to upgrade next on my team, right? I'm always giving kind of erring on the side again. If things are really close between two champions you're looking to invest in, I'm always working on my clan boss team number 1. The important thing is to get to Nightmare and then Ultra Nightmare. Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare can both drop, again, those legendary skill tomes and the sacred shards. Very, very hard to get in this game. There's really no, you know, viable way to farm them up, which there ought to be, Plarium. It's 2022. Come on, man. You don't have to go for every tournament or event inside this game, right? You don't have to compete in every one. You'd have to be spending a lot of money on energy to supplement, you know, your account if you want to do that. However, what I like to advise every player to do is when there's a, you know, when you're going to spend a lot of energy, right? So when you're going to use, let's say you've been, you know, saving up all week, you've been busy, whatever. When you're going to use a lot of energy, I always try to coincide that with a tournament that's going on in whatever dungeon you were going to farm anyway, right? So now I've gotten to the point where basically I don't think about, oh, what am I going to farm today? I just try to farm every day or every other day, whatever makes sense for the amount of energy you have. And I just farm, I just take turns farming areas, you know, that have tournaments going on right now, right? And if there's, you know, a spider tournament, but I don't want to farm spider for whatever reason, I don't know why you wouldn't, but let's just say you didn't, say ice golem. I would just skip it, you know? So I would just do the dungeons, tournaments that I like more, that I want those artifacts more, like Fire Knight for me personally. In a Spider, I would just make it a point to wait because, again, you know, we're limited on energy anyway. So that's how I handle tournaments and events, unless it's part of a special event like a fusion or a fragment summon. So how to decide which champion next, what other factors? I always say this all the time, but I'm gonna repeat it again in case it's the first time you watch the channel here, and that is endgame viability. Even if I'm in the beginning of the game, how long can I use this champion? So I'm obviously going to go with champions I think I can use longer in the game that are more endgame viable. Their value over a replacement champion. So, you know, if I already have a decent nuker, but this one's a little bit better, but they're still a good champion, I'd probably look for a champion that's going to help me out, you know, more, right? A bigger value over the replacement. And the last one is versatility. Which champion am I going to use in the most areas of the game? You can weigh those differently, as I mentioned with Clan Boss, but, you know, I'm going to go with a champion like, I don't know, Ninja, right? Who I can use anywhere in this game for the most part over a more niche champion like, probably unfair because, you know, Ninja's way better than Vlad, but a more niche champion like Vlad the Nightborn. So I'm always just going to go with the more versatile champion overall. So those are the 3 factors that I look at. The last tip for you guys. Been a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I apologize. But hopefully, you know, reminders for some of you guys or just new information for some of you as well. Never blindly copy anything from YouTube or from websites, right? Websites, YouTubers, content creators, Reddit, all that material is really, really valuable inside this game. It's helped me a lot personally, right? So there's a lot of utility off of amazing websites like Deadwood Jedi, which should be a tip in its own to go visit deadwoodjedi.com. You'll learn everything you need to know about Clan Boss there, right? Hell Hades has some amazing tools, great champion guides, so hellhades.com. And then the old school Ayumi Love is great out there as well. There's some things like damage multipliers you can get from those websites, or Ash Voyager, where he goes kind of in more depth. So I'll have all those tools linked for you guys in the show notes below. But with all that said, you know, read your masteries. Take the time to understand what they all do, and then think about how you're using that champion where you're using that champion, and what the team is around that champion, and how that all synergizes together. Sometimes it's even good to actually, if you really, care about it, to actually write it down on paper and just make yourself think about it and go through the cognitive process. There you have it, guys. Those are 25 quick or kind of long tips and tricks for you guys here in 2022 in Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end, and as always, take care, guys.